Anne of Green Gables, Chapter 8. Gilbert Blythe. "Everyone has been coming back from lunch too late," Mr. Phillips said the next day. "From now on, you must be in your seats when I return." At lunchtime, everyone went to Mr. Bell's spruce grove. Anne was at the far end of the grove. She was wandering around, singing softly to herself. Suddenly, Jimmy Glover shouted, "Master's coming!" The girls got to the schoolhouse just in time, but the boys had to climb down from the trees. Anne ran as fast as she could. She caught up with the boys at the door. Anne and the boys entered the room as Mr. Phillips hung up his hat. Anne dropped into her seat, gasping for breath. Mr. Phillips didn't want to bother punishing 12 students for being late, but he had to punish someone. "Anne Shirley," he said, "since you seem to like the boys' company so much, we shall let you have more of it. Go sit with Gilbert Blythe." The other boys snickered. Diana turned pale. Anne just stared. "Did you hear what I said, Anne?" Mr. Phillips asked. "Yes, sir," Anne said slowly, "but I didn't think you really meant it." "I did mean it," said Mr. Phillips. For a moment, Anne looked at him as if she were going to disobey him. Then she stood up and stepped across the aisle. She sat down beside Gilbert Blythe and buried her face in her arms on the desk. The children whispered and giggled and nudged each other, but they soon went back to work. When nobody was looking, Gilbert took a little pink candy heart from his desk. The heart had, "You are sweet," written on it. Gilbert slipped the heart under the curve of Anne's arm. Anne lifted her head. She took the pink heart between her fingertips and dropped it on the floor. She crushed the heart with the heel of her shoe. Then she buried her face in her arms again. After school had ended, Anne went over to her desk. She took out her books, writing tablet, pen and ink, and arithmetic. Then she piled them neatly on her cracked slate. "Why are you taking all those things home, Anne?" Diana wanted to know when they were out on the road. "I'm not going back," said Anne. Diana stared at her. "Will Marilla let you stay home?" she asked. "She'll have to," said Anne. "I'll never go to school again." "Oh, Anne," Diana said, "what will I do? Mr. Phillips will make me sit with that awful Gertie Pye. I know he will because she's sitting alone. Please come back to school, Anne." "I'd do almost anything in the world for you, Diana," Anne said sadly, "but I can't do this, so please don't ask me." "But think of all the fun you'll miss," Diana said. "We're playing ball next week, and you've never played ball before, Anne. It's very exciting. We're going to learn a new song, too, and we're going to read a new book out loud by the brook. You love to read out loud, Anne." But Anne's mind was made up. She would not go to school again. When she got home, she told Marilla. "Nonsense," said Marilla. "It isn't nonsense at all," Anne said. "Don't you understand? I've been insulted." "Insulted? Fiddlesticks. You'll go to school tomorrow as usual." "Oh, no," Anne shook her head. "I'm not going back, Marilla. I'll learn my lessons at home. I'll be as good as I can be, but I will not go back to school." Marilla decided not to say anything more about school just then. Instead, she went to ask Mrs. Lynde what to do. "Well," Mrs. Lynde said, "I'd let her stay home for a little while, that's what. She'll cool off and decide to go back on her own. The less fuss made the better, in my opinion." Marilla took Mrs. Lynde's advice. Not another word was said to Anne about going back to school. She learned her lessons at home, did her chores, and played with Diana. But Anne had made up her mind to hate Gilbert Blythe for the rest of her life.